What's going on, everybody? We're back doing more Jeep stuff today. In the last couple episodes, we were getting the install done on the Molly panel that's on the roof. Got a bunch of cool stuff done in the back seat. We did the Goose Gear rear seat delete.
That looks like what you would buy from the store.
And today, finally, we're getting on to some big boy stuff. We're doing a 300 amp individual circuit for all of our accessories. So wire, we have a fuse box, we have some bus bars, we got a bunch of stuff we're gonna be installing in the Jeep today. What's up, Blake? We're not gonna be using necessarily every single thing here, but I'm gonna go over each individual aspect, all the major stuff that we're going to be using. Because we have a 300 amp fuse box and we're probably only gonna ever pull like maybe 200 from here, we want to make sure that everything is safe, everything's future-proof. We have some nice 2-aught wire here. This is your 00 wire. We're gonna run this from the battery to our 300 amp breaker. We're gonna mount that inside of its waterproof junction box. So we're gonna cut a hole, we're gonna get that thing mounted, and then we're going to crimp our connections. Then we're going to run the rest of our 2-aught wire to a bus bar. Now I have two separate ones here. We have that's power and ground set up. Then I have a larger one. But from our bus bar, we're gonna split this big, thick 2-aught wire down to its 2-gauge wire. Our fuse box has 2 terminals for the power right there. So we have 150 left, 150 right, and then we have our ground up top. We have tons of accessories. We have different size grommets. We have a lot of heat shrink, lots of terminal lugs. We have, these are really great if you're ever going to be doing an install where your wires are visible. These are little waterproof grommets, little cable glands, and these actually ratchet down once they're installed to hold your wire nice and tight and keep it waterproof. We have 10-gauge double loomed wire. It's already wrapped in this PVC, so this is going to keep it nice and safe. We have our positive and grounds ready to head straight to the fuse box. Technically, if you're doing it one-off installs, you really don't need to run your ground all the way to the fuse box, but since all of this is together, this is going to be nice. And 10 gauge is a bit overkill for most automotive accessories, but depending on the cable run, you can have some voltage drops, so that's going to help a lot. We also have some split looms. Even though this is already protected and safe, we're going to run some split loom on it. We're also going to cover that's in split loom, try to make everything look as nice as possible. So here is the Goose Gear. This is a 60% delete. Honestly, I've debated for weeks on where to put this audio system. I really wanted it maybe behind the seat, maybe contained in a cool little box, and there's just not quite enough room. I've really grown to love this little area, and so I don't want to put it in here. So I think we're gonna bite the bullet and we're just going to put it in our cubby hole right here. We do have a lot of space, but I think we can probably fit everything here and still maintain like 50% of the space. So we're gonna find that out here in just a minute, because we're gonna do all of the fittings and crimps, and we're gonna do all of that work first before we run any wires. That'll give us an idea about how much space we actually have. Okay, so the first thing that we're gonna do is the time-consuming stuff. We're gonna take our 300 amp breaker and we're going to trim a hole into this junction box, and we're gonna try to make that fit onto the lid of this. It looks like our little inputs for our power wire that should be exactly the right size, and so we're gonna start chopping this up and seeing if we can make it fit. It's 1/2 of 3 1/4. You have to, oh my God.
1.625.
Very good. So fast forward a couple of hours, a little bit of fine work with the Dremel, a little bit of work with a rasp, and the fitment's pretty good. It's not perfect. It would have been way nicer if I could have had somebody 3D print that's top cover, but I'll take it. Our lines are perfect to run our power lines in and out of that. You can see the studs inside of there. There you go, yeah. So that's gonna work out really good. And my thought process, we have this area right here by the battery. I'd like to run a power wire around the battery, build a bracket so that it sits about right there, because the main harness goes underneath the passenger floorboard. And so we'll run our power wire this way into our little breaker box here, down and into the firewall. Not too bad though. Get this thing out and about. Yeah, that's gonna work good. Next up, we're gonna make sure that our terminals will fit inside of here. I think we're gonna have to bolt everything, but I think we're gonna have to pull the top of this off and actually run the wire through this little junction box, crimp the terminal, and then bolt it down, then pull it through. I don't think we're gonna be able to just shove it through that hole. We might actually have to make this hole a little bit bigger, but yeah, I'm really happy with that. We need to throw a couple little bolts in here, drill a couple holes, run a bolt through there with a nylock nut so that it doesn't wobble off. Our 2/0 wire barely fit in there. We are gonna have the wire loom, so I think I might drill this out just a little bit more. Almost fits like that too, so I'm gonna drill those out real fast. And so what we've done is we've cut the bottom off. That way it's a lot easier to maneuver the wires and those big terminals that 2/0 wire takes. We've ordered another one of these junction boxes because this piece right here, that top cover that we've been cutting on, will fit perfectly on the bottom of this, and I have some neodymium magnets we'll put in those holes. That way we have a nice cover to hide this, and it's also serviceable. Crimped one of our wires, tested that. This works really well. Pretty happy with where that's gone. So the next thing we're going to do, we're gonna build a bracket. We're going to have this box here. So again, power wire around, and then we're going to have our little junction box with that breaker right here. We're gonna trim this to fit, then that should fit pretty flush right here. So, yeah, looks pretty good. This is smaller, gives us a lot more area to work here in the engine bay. But right here, this bracket, this little plastic bracket that holds the wire harness, we already have a small hole right here. We're gonna drill that hole out just slightly, and that's gonna let us get a rivet nut in there. Our little corner brace L bracket will sit nice and flush because this area is actually flat. And our new little junction box breaker kit is gonna sit right on top of that. We're gonna build that false bottom. The whole assembly is going to be pretty tight and not going to move around a lot anyway. And then our power wire is going to run back behind the fuse box. I need to pull the battery out, and we need to drill a small hole and get the rivet nut in. It's easy enough, minus the fact that I'm short and not that strong. We'll get the battery out now. Got our rivet nut in there. All right, great little mounting point. Our OEM harness can go back on, and our L bracket should be able to just slide right on in. That went in really nicely. Just like that, it's about time to start running and crimping some wires. I needed access to the bottom of this guy as well as the top. So when this is unscrewed, you have full access. You have a lot of room to get stuff in there to get it tight. But last thing you want is one of these to be a little loose. That's why we cut this hole out in the bottom. I know it's kind of rough. We ordered another junction box because this top panel that we spent time yesterday cutting has the same pattern as this on the bottom. So that's actually going to be a perfect fitting little false bottom. And we're thinking about putting a neodymium magnet on the bottom. I got one that's just right where that would just go right onto there. That way we can run some wire kind of loosely here to see where we need to crimp at. And then we'll even go ahead and run the rest of that's in there. Here's our little junction box, breaker box that we built. And I already have our 2/0 power wire going to the battery side, kind of loosely mounted in here. We're gonna need some push mount cable ties to hold this wire nice and tight. That way it's not shaking. This wire does pull a lot. But before we cut any of this, just so if anything changes during the hard install of our little breaker box, we're not short a couple inches in any direction. It's always wise to leave several inches, maybe even more loose, just in case things change. So I think we're going to reconnect the battery, turn the wheel out, get the finger liner off, and see where we can run this wire inside its tab. Glove box. So this whole box is fully serviceable. Can open it up from the top. We also have all of our wire ran. So you can see it on the firewall back there. But that wire is coming through that grommet in the firewall. And then we're behind the pedals. And then we're running across the carpet here. And then we're behind the center console. And it runs all the way back. And now it's in here. This is obviously way too much. cut that to length. The other thing that we got done, our box that's going to go underneath the seat delete. I built this the other day. You're only going to see about that much. My seam right here. This is going to go inside where our wires are. This is going to protect anything from rolling over and hitting it. I guess we can just slide that in here. We need to mount this setup today. I also got that built. And so we're gonna run this big power wire over here to the positive bus bar, run a big ground wire to a chassis ground, and then all of that stuff bolts in. So our box slides in there, but it's gonna fit in there just like that. This stuff will bolt down, and when you're done, we're gonna slide it back in place. So yeah, it'll look like that when you pull the top off. So here's our ground wire. That's what we're going to be running to the bus bar. I have a lot of options in here. You know, we could bolt into any of these spots. There's a few more into here, but they're really thin. And so I think I've identified its lug. Pretty happy with that. That's going to let us run straight out, which will make it easy to pull that whole assembly back when we do need to work on it, just to make sure that we have good contact on that terminal. We're gonna lift that seat up, get our Dremel, scrape some of the paint away, just to make sure we have a really solid contact. Here's a final look before we tuck it down inside of here. Now obviously we're gonna have a cover on it, but I've actually shortened this wire quite a bit. There's a nice gap down here that makes it a little straighter across. The wire is so thick, and we had it running underneath the carpet. It was just bunching up and it was making it hard to work with. So when we do need the pull that's off to add accessories, we will have to pull that seat bolt. All of this is still hidden and really, really clean. Next, we're gonna slide this in place, bolt that seat, and then we're going to put in a couple wires on this. I have some 12-volt buttons that I use for different projects, and we're gonna put those in there and see if that works out. Despite being a really long project, power from the battery to a breaker to right here into the fuse box and then ground. It's incredibly simple. You know, this took several days, many days actually, but mainly it was just figuring out how to do it the most efficient way, the cleanest way, making it look really nice, and also making sure that it lasts hundreds of thousands of miles. And I think we've accomplished that. So I'm gonna slide this in place. We're gonna bolt it all down, make sure we have power. So that's another example of a project we thought we could do in a day, but to do it the right way, to do it correctly, make it look nice, you know, it took us several days. And so much of it is just planning, figuring out where we're gonna run the wires, testing stuff out, just to make sure you're really happy with it. Overall, I'm very happy with its setup. Man, there's nothing about this that I'm really upset about. The whole thing just came together beautifully. Gosh, it just really turned out nice. Here's our final product. Have our little right angle clip here holding our wire loom, and all the way around. Looks pretty factory. I know this one was all over the place. This is actually about a week of me screwing around, lots of off time just because the weather was not cooperating. It was really bad. If you've made it all the way to the end of this video, thank you for watching. You got a little bit of help out of this if you figured out where to run some wires, or if you just enjoyed my rambling and banter for some reason, drop a sub or like the video. More than anything, I really like reading comments. This ended up being a lot bigger project than I anticipated, so I know it's a little messy, but anyway, thanks for watching, guys, and we'll see y'all in the next video.